it's like an arms race kind of thing. It's kind of funny to see because these days it's kind of funny how these things go in waves. Just like there's the username rush of crypto, right? Of actual like usable crypto stuff, and then there's also at the same time the alt platform rush. And let me
Yeah.
see if oh, guess what? We are live. Hey everyone. Oh, I have a great show for you today for sure. Let me hit the intro real quick and we'll get started. So, hey everyone, I have the wonderful pleasure today of having the one and only Scott Cunningham, aka Scott C Business, aka Crypto and Things, aka Canuck Superstar, whatever else you want to call him, all on the show. So many awesomenesses all wrapped up in one person with a little bit of a laggy video, but that's okay. People know what you sound like, and that's what really matters. How's it going, man? First.
Yeah, it's going good. Sorry about the lag. I don't know why it's so laggy, but yeah, no, it's going good.
Oh, I have a live chat comment right away. It says Canada into house from studios. So hey, just this is a great time to roll into. We do have the live crypto super chat, and for people who don't know what Cointree is, it's a little donation site you can go and donate crypto stuff. But I have it hooked up here that if you give a donation, you go to cointr.ee/the desert links. You can leave a little message with a donation. It'll show up here. And as always, sometimes I do read stuff like I just did now from the actual live chat, the YouTube live chat, or Facebook or Twitter or whatever. But I'm heavily biased towards stuff that comes with a little bit of coin. So I might intentionally ignore a really good question until you get bored and just actually, send the super chat there. So cointr.ee/the desert links, leave a message with the thing, and then there you go. So, and I apologize for making Scott zoom in and out every time I switch to that page. It's just the way things are. I got to adjust things later, but it works well. So first off, in case you didn't know, that's the Canadian flag right there. I feel like it's very prominently featured. I don't have an American or a Mexican flag in here. I'm sorry. So let's just jump right into the awesome, cool stuff that is the news, because we do have quite a few fun, interesting things to talk about crypto social media platforms. But first, some of the people, the news these days in crypto tends to be a lot of regulation and what's the government doing and all that kind of stuff, and a lot of just like pump and who's buying this and who's investing in Bitcoin and stuff like that. So let's just go to the first one. I'm sure we've seen the U.S. Treasury basically has floated trying to crack down on what they call self-hosted crypto wallets, meaning where you as far as I'm able to tell, their definition is where you hold your private keys, where it's not some other company custodying on that. And there's been a lot of pushback from the industry, of course. Even Coinbase, which is like the super regulating kind of thing, has kind of, been very against this kind of thing, even though they don't let you self-host a lot of your stuff. So first, what's your take on this whole thing from across the pond over there, across the line?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, obviously this is like awful for crypto and really just against the ethos and what we want to see. And I mean, and we're seeing it with companies like PayPal, like these other like fiat exchanges that are offering crypto where they always hold your keys. So yeah, it seems like there's this big push to kind of centralize a decentralized technology. And I guess, it's almost expected to see this kind of thing from them. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely not good. We obviously like the awareness it brings, but the actual policy and legislation that's going to negatively impact people regarding decentralization is obviously a terrible thing.
Yeah, has there been this much out of like nonsense out of Canada, the Canadian regulators? Because that's one of those things where you talk about freedoms and all that stuff, where a lot of regulations tend to be not as bad in the U.S. as Canada, except when it comes to like money and immigration type things, where the U.S.
Yeah,
tends to be
yeah,
real jerks, like the biggest, some of the biggest of the jerks in the world. So, has there been anything
yeah.
in Canada about banning these self-hosted wallets or anything like that?
I haven't seen anything yet, and you know, it is interesting. It does seem to be a lot more strict in the US. You're right,
Mm-hmm.
because like even for like something like realty, like where I invest in like crypto real estate, it's
Mm-hmm.
real estate in the US, but US investors can't invest in it. Only people outside the US can invest in real estate within the US. So, yeah,
Totally
it's a really
ridiculous.
weird, yeah, it's a weird conundrum that they kind of get themselves in with things like this, where it's like you're only accepting funding from people outside the US, but you're a US company. So, yeah, it's pretty odd.
Yeah, I personally don't really see there being much traction on this thing. It's I don't know. Maybe I'm just an optimist, but there's just not a lot of. So first off, the U.S. is not in a vacuum, right? And even though for the financial world, the U.S. has kind of been like the powerhouse. Now that the world is decentralized as far as finance is concerned, now I think it could be really left behind, and so you'd have to have some sort of a connection in a regulatory framework across a lot of major first world players for this to go anywhere. Because otherwise, you could just be like, oh well, I can't send my Canadian guy can't send me money because it's illegal. It's just like, it's just that would not work out at all. So I'm very
Yeah.
optimistic on this, just not working out. But I think that if it did work out for that, I think that would be, what do they say when self-hosted wallets are outlawed, only outlaws will have self-hosted wallets. And so it is kind of funny that you could just spin up some code, right? You could just download some stuff and compile some stuff from GitHub, and then you're a criminal. Just because, and
Mm,
it's not even an illegal thing. It's just that the way you're doing it is like illegal. And like if you do
hmm.
that, and then I send you some little bits that then go to there, and it's just like, oh, that's all illegal. It's like, I don't really think they do that. So that's that whole horrible thing. Next horrible thing, or this, I'm not quite as crazy on this one, but there's been a floated unregulated stablecoin ban in the
Yeah.
U.S., which basically would say you need approval from U.S. regulators in order to issue a fiat or a dollar backed cryptocurrency. And so, first, what's your hot take on that one?
I think it's really ironic that at the same time of launching a Facebook antitrust lawsuit, that they're also setting up Facebook to have the only legal stablecoin. Um, so yeah, I don't know. It's very very weird. I mean, the U.S. money supply is the worst it's ever been in terms of like how much it's been increasing. Like I read 23.6% of all US dollars were printed in
Mm-hmm.
the last year.
Oof, yeah.
So they need stable coins to I guess get people who are in crypto to also keep money within fiat to some degree. Because it's pegged, right? So I mean it's still going to go down just as much. And yeah, I mean, it's definitely not going to be good, but I think they're really just kind of positioning so that they can set up all these like soon we'll probably see a PayPal stable coin, and all
Mm-hmm.
these entities will start releasing their stable coins and it'll be legitimate, whereas everything that we have now will be illegitimate. But yeah, I mean, hopefully this doesn't I mean, this is kind of, more fluff just like the last one, hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, a lot of this stuff is all kind of coming out at the same time. It seems very interestingly timed, to say the
Yeah, for
least.
sure. Especially with the dollar war. It's funny because the dollar is one of the better fiat currencies, and even then, it's just like,
Yeah.
ooh. And I think
Yeah.
it's so. First off, I think it's funny that you know the idea behind fiat currency that when it's not they're not holding on to, well, we want people to lose value. They don't care. They don't actually want the people to lose value. They just want to get the new value created. They want to
Hmm.
basically transfer it away. And the fact that they're like, well, only we should be able to do this is like, well, why? It's just the same. The reason is because someone else is printing all these coins, and
Hmm.
they don't get to just print a whole bunch of extra ones and then pay for stuff that never got voted in the budget, for example. Like, what country can you bomb next if you can just print as much money as you can and everyone all of a sudden, has their value, the purchasing power is going down, which I've noticed, just this year I've noticed prices go up, which is kind of always a little scary when you actually see it before your eyes. You're like, hey, I remember this year it cost this, a few months later it cost that. But as far as like the stablecoin thing, I have a little bit less sympathy than for other things, just because. So I feel I've always been a stablecoin minimalist, and maybe a little bit of a grumpy, like old school crypto guy in that term. Because,
Which is fair. Which is fair.
yeah, it's because I thought like the entire reason, and of course I'm old school today with the Bitcoin shirt and stuff, but like the entire reason for this stuff was to avoid the constant devaluation and loss of value of the dollar. And it's like, we're going to make a revolutionary digital currency that crashes along with the dollar. So let's make a Bolivar stable coin. How about, it's like, what are those sorts of things? And I feel like the only reason a stable, like I understand now that it's a little bit, the ecosystems have developed a little bit more and there's reasons to need this. But I feel like in the beginning, people just made stable coins because because of government regulation. That they're like, well, we want to be able to trade in and out of stuff, but we don't want to actually, be regulated, do KYC when we do this. And so we want to like do dollars, but it's not really dollars, but it kind of is. And so I kind of feel like stablecoins times has been numbered. Their days have been numbered for a long time. Ever since the beginning, it was just a way of getting around regulators. And now regulators are catching up as it kind of probably have been expected to since the beginning. And I'm kind of surprised at how well stablecoins have held up against that now you can basically, it's not just, well, we're printing Bitcoins or something like that. It's not real money, just some random digital thing. Don't need to worry about us. It's like, no, we're actually printing dollars kind of. And we're just doing it, which is counterfeiting. You can go to prison for a long time for doing this stuff. But if it's just like technologically advanced counterfeiting, all of a sudden it's like the hip new thing to do. It just kind of, it's a little strange, but basically, yeah, I hope they don't end up doing kind of regulations on that. But I wouldn't be surprised if they did. I'm surprised now that it's taken them so long to even think about this.
Yeah, and I would say like it's interesting because for me the only like use case that I like having stablecoins for is just if I'm like if there's some big swing in price and I'm like, all right, lock in my BTC into USD and then, trade back in a few hours or something. I would never want to just like hold stable coins so I can watch the value go down. Like what I've always said with fiat or stable coins or with anything is people will always say, yeah, but crypto is so volatile. Like it's so risky. You could lose money. And I'm like, the only thing that you get with like fiat is the promise that you'll lose money slowly. But not even now. I mean, now we're seeing that isn't even really a very good promise. Like you're going to lose money even faster.
Yeah.
And like I was saying with the U.S. money supply, like I think the dollar index for the U.S. dollar is down like 10 points last time I checked. So yeah, and there was an article just the other day for here in Canada that we should expect food prices to go up about 5% in 2021. And yeah, we have the same issue with our money supply. It's just highest increase in Canadian history as well over the last year. So yeah, I mean, if people don't see the effects now, they're going to see the effects soon. And like I put out a tweet the other day that I was just saying, it's not even about getting rich anymore. It's just about not becoming poor.
Yeah.
Is why you would need cryptocurrency. So
yeah, just not losing the money year after year. And like, especially people who live in, I think there's some people that live in a very isolated financial environment, like in the central US or in Western Europe or wherever, where you have just pretty much one currency that you deal with, and you're just like, well, this is the way things are. It's pretty stable. But obviously, seeing the difference between the Canadian and the US dollar, having to deal with both is a different perspective. And then I grew up in the north of Mexico, where when I was buying stuff, I remember the conversion rate was like 7 pesos to the dollar and stuff. And I'm like, all right, now it's like 20 something. It's like way higher. And so it's like, can you imagine if I just had all my life savings in pesos instead of the dollar, how screwed I'd be? And then also now you start to think the other way. What if you have all your savings in dollar instead of, gold, silver, crypto, now crypto, of course.
Yeah, and the really interesting thing is that the richer you are, the more money you're going to lose. So it
Mm-hmm.
actually incentivizes people with more money to invest to actually be looking at scarce assets like crypto, like Bitcoin. Um, not just all crypto, but obviously like Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Um, because it's like if you have $1 million and the US raises their money supply by like 23%,
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna have a lot less money the next year, or you won't see the dollar value less, but you'll have that much less purchasing power. So it's like even people who do have like a large amount of savings should really
Mm-hmm.
see the value in something like this because it's just going to get worse. And it only took Venezuela like a year to just completely devastate their economy. So,
Yeah.
like I'll bring this up with my friends who invest, and they're like, "Oh, but like, yeah, it might be the biggest increase, but like, we're probably not going to see some crazy, economic collapse for so long. Like, we have so much time to worry about this." And it's like, it only took a year for Venezuela, so like, don't get ahead of yourself.
Yeah. And I mean, economic collapses are also kind of obvious when you zoom out as well. A lot of times people might not see like the day to day, just, oh, it's worth so much less, it's worth so much less.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's just like over 10 years, you need context. You're like, oh, we know it's been a rough 10 years, but we kind of made it through. It's been fine. And then you see the guy who's been making it and like, geez, this guy's doing really well. He must be doing something right. And it's one of those things where I don't know, like what I would love to do when I'm tracking crypto prices, which I don't regularly do. I'm not an obsessive like that. But what I like to do is find like a basic purchasing power metric, and just track
Mm.
versus the U.S. dollar, which is probably one of the, again, one of the better fiat currencies. And then purchasing power is the flat line, and then just see like, oh wow, my crypto went up like 3x this year, but only went up like 2x if you count what you could buy with it. So it's more
Mm.
that the
Yeah.
part of that is the dollar crashing. It's not just not just crypto going up.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think the big hurdle is just getting people to like internalize that concept,
Mm-hmm.
and people are just so obtuse when it comes to being like, look, like, aren't you upset that you're losing money? And they're like, well, my bank account says the same number, so like I don't really see the issue. And it's like, well, you're spending more money at the grocery store, and they're like, yeah, well, prices go up, that's how things work. But it's like, but are you getting paid? Did you get a raise this year for the
Yeah.
same equivalent value? It's like, no. Well, then you're losing money. And even if you did get a raise of the equivalent value, usually you have to work pretty hard to get a raise. And
Mm-hmm.
now a raise is all it's going to do is just be equal to inflation. You're not actually making any more money either.
Yeah, cost of living adjustments and stuff. It's
Yeah.
especially crazy when you see people who work. So where I live here in New Hampshire, it's probably one of the lowest tax areas of the entire country, and there's a lot of people who work in Boston. Like I could, if I would got in my car now, I could get to Boston in under an hour. And so there's a lot of people that live on this side and then commute to Boston because the cost of living difference is
Mm.
pretty massive, but or significant. I won't say massive. And yeah, you can kind of see that difference, and it's sort of like what you could call work arbitrage in a way, where you
Yeah.
you work here and do that. But speaking of token stuff and prices, Library has had a very interesting, I would say, year. I think this year has been pretty crazy for the Library project in general,
Yeah.
but especially like these last couple of weeks, it's been a little crazy. So first off, you saw the TechCrunch article, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that kind of gave it a nice big boost there.
Yeah, there was a TechCrunch article saying,
Yeah.
YouTube alternative stuff. And then you saw it was just YouTube keeps being worse and worse. And it's almost like, Library finally had a viable product because, try to use Library back in like 2016, 2017, and just like, yeah, no one's going to use this, never mind. But like when it finally got to Library TV and then Odyssey and stuff, just as YouTube started to become like the shining example of how to ruin a good thing. Just
Yeah.
the worst. Which shout out to everyone watching this on YouTube, by the way. It's kind of funny.
Yeah, but yeah, no, I mean, I don't even think there's a lot of good other alternatives. I mean, I do like the Hive ecosystem and I like
Hmm.
3Speak. but there aren't really very many good alternatives. Like I know people in the comments are watching might think a bunch of these like streaming platforms
Hmm.
for crypto, but I don't like any of the live streaming platforms on crypto. So sorry if you're watching on one, but
Yeah.
I'm not a fan at all, and they're definitely not YouTube alternatives by any
Have any of
means.
them? Do any of them really work?
Depends what you consider working, right? Like, can you withdraw your funds?
Oh.
Not really. I mean, D Live has a lot of restrictions, but you technically can.
Mm-hmm.
You have to KYC with an ID. You have to have a minimum amount. You have to have been a streamer. So if you deposited funds and you're not a streamer, you're not going to get that back unless you stream for some reason. And then there was one other one. I can't remember exactly what it was, but yeah, there's so many requirements that they just make it so challenging. And then something like Theta, you absolutely cannot withdraw whatsoever. And anyone who thinks I'm like lying or something, test out depositing like 10 T fuel and see what you can do.
People are crazy about that sort of a thing, because people get very tribal about these things. But we'll get more into the deep dive on that stuff in just a minute. Library kind of gangbusters year. I believe they got an Odyssey iOS app out or about to be out, and
Oh, okay. Yeah, I know they just launched the main one this week, I think.
yeah, which is
Yeah.
nice. I use the library Android app, and it's all right. It's pretty good. I mean, it does its job. I do
Hmm.
enjoy that there's comments and notifications. You get pinned comments and all the old YouTube stables. And I haven't had people complaining about not being able to watch my videos lately, probably because I transcode using the client and stuff, so it's not just
Yeah,
massive.
that's so important now for people to like
Yeah.
any creators watching, you gotta compress your videos. Otherwise, people are
Hmm.
gonna have trouble and then they're gonna be upset.
Yeah, and like I record stuff on my phone sometimes, when I'm doing like rant videos and stuff like that. And then it's like, all right, it's like a 10-minute video. It's like 8 GB or something like that because, it's like
Yeah.
really high quality and it looks great. I'm like, oh, this looks great. I'll upload it. And then it's just like a day and a half later, it's like uploading. And then someone's just like, I can't watch more than 30 seconds. It's done. And like, oh, what country
Yeah.
do you live in? I'm like, I'm your neighbor. Oh, never mind. It's like
Yeah.
one of those kinds of things. So yes, transcode your stuff. What are your biggest? I mean, obviously, libraries do great. Jeremy is on fire on Twitter all the time. I think
Hmm.
he thrives for like the shitpost generation. I think that's what he is. And it's funny
Yeah.
because I'm not gonna rat out.
He's good with like the culture. Like he's doing all the right things like culture wise and like in media. Yeah, he's making all the right moves. Like no other CEOs are kind of like in there making little quips about little things and like talking
Yeah,
about all the different angles of what's going on. And
and
yeah.
the funny thing is he also does on his personal account stuff, and then he runs another account which I'm not gonna dox him on, but that's probably where he's the spiciest. And sometimes a little bit too spicy, but we've had that conversation before. But basically, I think that this has been a terrible year for a whole lot of people. And for a whole lot of people, this has been like their moment to shine. And I think Jeremy's one of those people where just the worse tech censorship ratchets down on things, just the more,
Yeah.
not only is it good for his business, not only is it better for his life like that, but it's better for his like his feeling of energy, his psyche, just like he just seems to be love. Maybe it's just what I see online. But he seems to be loving it. But as far as the
Yeah.
censorship thing
Just
is,
letting it all go.
yeah, as far as that censorship with YouTube, I think the latest thing, I remember in the beginning of the year, they said anyone who posts anything on YouTube that contradicts this, I believe is the World Health Organization, then we're going to
Yeah.
take down that stuff. And then, of course, some videos that were taken down were vindicated within like a week. Like the next week,
Hmm.
the WHO, not the band, but the WHO was saying like, no, this is what we should be doing. And so now I believe it is around the election, and of course, this is one of those things where I am not like what one could call an election maximalist. I kind of don't. I cannot believe we in the 21st century are still basically voting like this. Like the most important thing in the
Yeah.
world is who gets to decide everything, right? And who gets to take all our money, who gets to bomb people. Like it's a lot of power, and just the fact that you just scribble some stuff on pieces of paper and show like the how horrendously insecure the voting system is. I would say anywhere in the world, but I have more experience with it in this country. It's just like, how
Yeah.
do people believe this? But that's just my personal rant. Clearly, there's a little bit of, basically, as far as right now, the election has been concluded for Joe Biden, supposedly, but there's like 18 or 20 states now are in a lawsuit that the Supreme Court has agreed to hear over some shenanigans on how the votes were created and tallied and all that kind of stuff. And so I don't really expect it to go anywhere, but I could be surprised. It just basically peak shit show. But in terms of like, it isn't actually, the election isn't actually concluded. It just
Yeah, because they have to like I'm probably a little less informed
Yeah.
on U.S. politics, but my understanding is they have to come to a decision very, very soon, like in the next few days or something, or then it goes to like a vote or in with the House or the Senate. I'm not super informed, but maybe you can educate me on that.
Yeah, I'm not. It's an intricate system, not super informed on that either. But basically, each state, based on the results of the election, actually elects electors or representatives, kind of like delegated proof of stake, right? It's kind of
Yeah.
like a
Yeah.
DPoS system, and then they send in, and then all the electors vote, and then there it goes. Now, basically, the lawsuit is regarding basically if the lawsuit carries through the way they want, the electors of a few of these states which had shenanigans in them would be completely invalid. So they wouldn't go to Trump or Biden. Just, you're not counted. And then that would be the way it goes. If, for whatever reason, there's an election that just, it's like inconclusive for whatever reason, then you would actually have like the legislatures of the states, would actually then vote. And there's a few other processes, and it's all very confusing. And I did actually look into, at one point, just for curiosity's sake, while I'm trying to fall asleep, I'm on Wikipedia. There was another election right close to after the U.S. Civil War, where something did happen similar to this, and it was such a shit show that in the end, they basically just came to an agreement that says, "Oh, all right, look, if we do this for you, will you guys stop contesting the election?" And they say, "Oh yeah, we'll just let you in," and that's what happened. It wasn't concluded to where someone legitimately was found to win. Just the other guys agreed to give up if they got some of their demands met, and it was like, ooh,
True. Wow.
So, all that to be said, I'm sorry if I bored the crap out of people who subscribe to this channel to not be involved in politics, but basically, YouTube has decreed that the election is over. And if you dispute the validity of the election at all, which is what is being done at the highest court in the entire country that voted 6-3 to specifically hear these allegations of stuff. Basically, if you agree with the Supreme Court in this case, you get kicked off. Your video gets deleted.
Well, I mean, on social media, law doesn't have any meaning, so it's just it's the law of the of the platforms now.
Yeah, and that has really spurred a lot of stuff to go onto LBRY and other platforms, probably because people talk, right? And it's not like a propaganda effort to discredit the election necessarily. It just sometimes people are like, well, this is what people are talking about. Like, they want to understand what's going on in the world. They want to talk about it. Even if they're like, no, I think Joe Biden won legitimately, and I think all this is nonsense. But if you start saying, well, you know what, there's this and that, and you could get kicked off and be like, well, I'm on your guys' side. Like, no, we can't say anything. Just don't say anything.
Yeah, the scary thing is it's not even about necessarily the side that you take. It's just having the discussion is what isn't allowed. And that's where you kind of got to wonder, like, what's going on. Like, I just posted the other day that a 2-year-old post that I had on Facebook where I basically just said, like, if you don't support free speech, like, why would anyone trust what you have to say? And then Facebook removed that and gave me like a warning, and it was like, your page is at risk of being unpublished for this post. And I was like, Jesus.
Was it the hashtag you used, or is it just?
I'm pretty sure it might have been the hashtag, because I had hashtag Tommy Robinson, because it was in support of what was going on with him for being arrested in the UK for reporting on a case. Because in the UK, apparently, it's illegal to go against certain things around free speech when you're reporting on specific cases. I don't know exactly how in
Yeah.
depth that goes, but they definitely don't have freedom of speech, especially for journalists, which is wild. But yeah, Facebook put that under like a dangerous individual report. It's
Yeah.
weird that they'd go back years and years to some like random little thing.
I think it
But
was
yeah, it's
probably some new policy, and then they just found like hashtags and
retroactively.
just decided to go
Yeah.
clean them all out. I got Twitter suspended for like a couple, like a day, not too long ago because of some post I made in like late 2017, I think late 2017, where I was just like telling people to watch the Conor McGregor fight, and I was saying, hey, watch it. You can buy Buffalo Wild Wings, gift cards via Bit Refill. Go do that. And I used some like picture that was apparently copyrighted. And then they took like 2.5 years. They're like, oh, by the way, way back then, for this one little thing that was like just. And it's like I'm telling people, I'm pimping their brand. I'm not showing any spoilers. I'm pimping their brand, trying to get people to actually put money in their pockets, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's just the wrong thing, and they get you. And it's like, you know, it's just like there's a certain fear in a society, in a unfree society, and of course, I don't think there is such a thing as a perfectly free society. But
I
in
think what's happening now is like they're like they're logging stuff that is like not really a problem. And then like just coming up with some sort of rule in the future that then they can retroactively like say, oh, this guy disagreed with something that we support, but like that's okay. So instead, 3 years ago he had this one thing that's completely irrelevant, but we'll just like ban him for that.
yeah, same thing like the Twitter cancel culture type thing, which I've kind of avoided. It's kind of, I don't know. It's just Twitter's an awful place for a lot of people. I'm quite enjoying it because the parts that I'm in are mostly good,
Yeah.
and then sometimes you get some trolling. But that's, I like, for example, when there's a recent thing where an actress came out as trans, and depending on the reporting thing of it, people either said, actor Elliot Page comes out as trans, or which with the more accurate headlines was actor Ellen Page comes out as trans Elliot Page, which is literally just this person that used to call this, well, now it's that. But that was a much panned headline because you can't dead name, or you can't dead name
Yeah,
him
exactly.
in the thing. And it's like, okay, I get if you're like calling someone who, if you're disrespecting someone or, pissing them off or whatever, but you can't even just say a headline. You can't just say like,
Because
U.S.
then they don't know unless they were like super, super popular. You don't even know who was the previous person that is the new person.
Yeah, it's like, can you imagine saying like U.S. invades Afghanistan? You can't say, you have to say U.S. invades Middle Eastern country adjacent to Pakistan. It's like, what?
Yeah.
And then you can, I think if you dead name someone on Twitter, you get instantly banned. So that's why people have flocked en masse to alternative platforms. And now is a time to just dump on alternative platforms. Not really, but now it's time to talk about it. So I have been on a lot of these just because I like alternative stuff. I want to make sure I'm out there on whatever the next big thing is. I'm not as obsessive about it as you are. I'm not everywhere. I'm like half the places. So
True.
yeah, why don't you tell me what's been going through your mind lately?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that a lot of these communities will be like, "Oh, Scott's wrong. He doesn't know what he's talking about." But also, everyone in the community has to come and like go after Scott at the same time because it's like, oh, well, I thought what I was saying didn't matter, but yeah, I mean, I'm very like I don't go around like pumping up platforms a lot. So people are like, "Oh, why are you being so negative?" And it's like, well, I'm not really here to just like cheerlead for a platform. I'm more so here to like figure out what is not working and either like get them to fix that or to tell people like you probably don't want to be using this thing because it's not good for your time. And because no, I mean, me and you are on more platforms than anyone might even ever use in their entire life.
Yeah, of
Uh,
course.
right? Like most people are only trying to use a couple platforms. Like even just using Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter is more than what some people will ever do.
Yeah.
So like when there's like 50, when there's 100 platforms, people are not going to take the time to actually go through and test all these platforms. So someone's got to do it and kind of give the take on what is actually out there and what's the benefits and what's the cons.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, a lot of these communities are super tribal and they don't take very well to like any
Yeah.
criticisms or it's like, or I could just point out something that's like completely objective, like can you withdraw your funds?
And then they're
And
like, "You're a shill scammer."
yeah,
It is
like
so funny to
like
see.
those yeah, they'll say like I'm a scammer because I want to withdraw my funds, and it's like, come on, like the writing is on the wall for some of these things.
Yeah. Well, before I
Yeah.
jump too close into that, I did get a crypto live chat. Uh, Libraries, decentralized social media keep getting better. 2021 is our year. The nudge, Matt. Thanks. It says anonymous under there, but on the
Yeah,
actual
but
CoinTree
he
thing here,
actually,
but it actually says, like, I actually opened it up in the browser on the phone here that I have on the mount, and it actually does say nudge instead of anonymous. So I don't know
okay,
what's
yeah.
the inconsistency. JJ, if you're watching this, you better get on it. Anyway, yeah, thanks very much for that. It is definitely going to be our year, and I some of them are like, as we said before, library is getting, it's approaching YouTube. It's not quite, in some ways it's definitely better and more feature rich than YouTube, but
Yeah.
in some, it's not a lot of ways that most people care about. It's not there yet, but Odyssee's nice. Like, it's something I could recommend that I don't have to make excuses for. Now,
Yeah.
these other platforms for like social media stuff, that's a little bit of a different story. So who is the latest
Yeah.
people to get like pissed off at you?
Oh, well, just before we dive into that, I will
Oh yeah.
say, since I've been only hyping up library, like we said
Mm-hmm.
before, there is the issues with like having to compress your videos but they're
Mm-hmm.
they're coming out with a lot of different stuff to like incentivize more peer-to-peer like hosting and stuff. So
Yeah.
I expect library to continue to get better in that regard. And I mean, with their coin going way up, hopefully they'll have the funding to do more stuff as well. So, I
Mm-hmm.
will say that library isn't perfect either, but I do very much enjoy library. The latest community to get mad at me, which you probably saw, was Twetch. Because
Yeah.
they
I
don't. I just simply posted like it doesn't make sense that you have to pay for everything you do. People who switch to alternative forms of social media are not looking to spend more money. They're looking to have censorship resistance, make money rather than spend money, better privacy, free speech, all that good stuff. And just pointing out that you have to spend like $1 to switch your settings on Twitch. I got people calling me a socialist, and it's like,
yeah.
like you shouldn't. It's not. It's not anti-capitalistic to
Mm-hmm.
not want to frivolously pay for all things always.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Did you see my vague tweet about, you know, most like if you have to pay for something that should be free,
yeah,
you'll
I
probably
saw
be a
that.
scam. It's like that was kind of the inspiration behind that. The thing about, I will come to a partial defense on Twitch, even though I haven't twitched in a couple days because I too went Twitch broke, and there
Yeah,
we go. Just I'm not gonna pay like two
yeah.
cents, like 2 cents to tweet something
So you're
out.
a socialist too, I guess.
Yeah, and the thing is, I'm always one of those people that I think Twitch is probably the best alternative platform out there today. Maybe that, and I would completely understand if you disagree with me. I don't think it's perfect, and I don't think it's good enough yet either. Which I'd like to get to good enough before perfect.
Yeah.
Every time, first off, in defense of the Twitchians, a lot of that stuff is kind of true. A lot of it is also they're like shitpost or meme lord people. So they're not like a lot of this like anger. It's not so much anger as it is just like shitposty flames. Like, it's not, some of it is, but some of it is just like they're just roasting you. Especially Elon Moist, the CEO of Twitch. He's not exactly, yeah. He's a little bit he's just being funny as well as whatever. I think that they're on to, first off, the Bitcoin SV ethos seems to be very hardcore capitalist, but not just like but also like it's kind of like almost like Randian in that it's like a parody of capitalism, sort of, and it seems to be like if you value stuff, you should pay for it, which I guess I agree with, right? And it's a great, refreshing counter to the whole everything is free money that's all over the space that kind of hides the fact that someone's paying for it eventually. Like every time someone mints new coins to pay for, your free posts or whatever, someone is losing value somewhere because of that. Someone is paying for it. And like every time like Publish 0x gives you tips, it's free to you, but someone paid money to give that to them to then give out to people, and they're either getting a raw deal because they didn't know what they're doing, or they're benefiting because of all they get. They get to fund extra liquidity on exchanges. They have some deal with exchanges to do stuff, or just the extra awareness of the token pumps the price and it works. But it's like everything works, and just the let me just pay for it, no bullshit idea is, I think, extremely refreshing. The problem is, I think it overshot the mark, and now it's the point where if you pay for something, it must have value. And it's kind of like, so like, and Twitch is a perfect, it is like the ultimate BSV, it's the soul of BSV. Take it or leave it. For whatever, it's the soul of BSV. And so the idea is, okay, well, we have a development budget. We're trying to build features out, but they're like, what if we had people crowdfund stuff, but it wasn't in a altruistic, like, let's all crowdfund this cool thing. It's just like, you want to pay for it. And if enough people pay for it, they unlock the feature. That kind of like, and people, like, how are they going to tell, if they ask you, pay $10 to be able to do encrypted DMs, like, and you don't want to do it, I mean, obviously you just don't get those. But if you do want to do it, how is that scamming people? It's not. It's just taking advantage of who I think are suckers. But again, that's just that's just my opinion. And, it's working for them so far.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like they're misleading you in that they're saying, by the way, if you switch to dark mode, you're gonna get rich.
Yeah, I'm just saying, pay for dark mode, and it's just like, I'm gonna like, I don't want to pay for it. Too bad you don't get it. And then they're like, well, it must be a really
well,
cool,
I mean, there
must
is
be a
also
real
the
cool
of,
dark
like,
mode. I'm gonna pay.
Yeah, like, where does the starting money that they give you come from? Because is that not socialism? Like, there's a little bit of a oxymoron there where it's like, well, we're giving you $5, but also like pay for everything, and this is just to like get you started. I thought it was ironic when people were posting, well, it's probably just because your content isn't very good, and I think that's ironic since you're saying most of it is like memes. But I was like, yeah, I mean, all I really got to post on the platform was like, hey guys, this is my first post. And then I ran out of money because I was switching some settings around and following some people. So I didn't even really get the chance to do much. And it's just the real thing, whether or not this could be the best platform in the world, it really doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, you're not going to get people to just like come from Twitter and being like, hey, wouldn't it be sick if Twitter made you pay 10 cents every time you tweeted? People would be like, what the hell are you talking about? Why is that better? It's like, well, they're not getting your ad data or whatever, or like, and people are like, I don't care about that. I'm not trying to spend, like $10 a day for all my tweets. Like, I don't know. Like, in my opinion, for when I review all these different platforms, the most important thing is, well, first, can you withdraw your funds? And second, is the average person going to be able to use this, or like have any like motivation to use this? Because if the average person is not going to ever like click, and this is never going to work for them, then how is it going to succeed? Like, my parents can use Instagram and Facebook and Twitter now, just barely, but they would never grasp the concept of paying to do that, like especially per post. Yeah. And I just don't see that really like taking off. And it's like, well, you can make money, but that's also, you've got to, like for me to
Mm-hmm.
actually make money, I would have to then get more BSV and deposit it and then keep that going. And for a lot of people, they might not even have a BSV wallet or know where to get it. And it's like, it creates all these like hurdles that,
Yeah.
you know, you have to give people free money before you're going to get them to like really do all this crazy stuff. Like if someone gets an upvote on Hive and they're like, "Oh
Mm-hmm.
my god, like I made like $5. Okay, like how do I get this out? How do I get this into my actual wallet?" And then they learn all these different things about exchanges and all these different things that they need to learn because they're
Mm-hmm.
motivated to, but no one's motivated to give money away. No
Yeah,
one's
of
like, "Oh, how
course.
do I get my wallet so I can pay them and I really want to give them my money." And it's
Well,
like
I would say
no
no
one's
one because Twitch does have quite a few people paying for fucking dark mode, but
Yeah, I guess, but I would say, I mean, no one more
mhm,
colloquially,
of
as in
course,
like it's not
few.
going to really like take on, like it's not sustainable or feasible. And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, all these platforms that I criticize too,
Mm-hmm.
they don't really have many users at all.
Yeah, of course.
And they like to get mad at me for saying this, that, but it's like if I go on theta.tv and I look through the streams and there's 50 streams in total and the highest number of viewers is like 100, it's like, yeah, it's a starting platform, but people are probably also realizing that you can't really get your money out, like a lot of these issues that would otherwise actually incentivize them to use the platform. They're
Mm-hmm.
realizing that and they're not sticking around for good reason because it's really not what they promise you. And I'll probably get a lot of flack for saying this, but SoMe.social
Mm-hmm.
kind of misleads people with the amount of money that you see being made. Every other person posting has got like $100 rewards on their posts, and it's like, do they though? Are they really getting $100? And no, because like you have to pay to verify and you have to successfully verify and then you can withdraw. And over the past like 2 months, withdrawals have been like going on and off and on and off. And to that point, right now they are not currently working. So
Yeah,
yeah.
that whole thing of like how much you've made. Not to turn this into the dunk on Twitch hour, but Twitch says I earned $24.09. Well, then how come I only have 10 cents left? Like
Yeah.
you earned, but you kind of spent more, so you know.
Yeah, they leave out the fact that it's not really profit. It's just
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
which
exactly.
the one social like it's funny because a lot of these social platforms do pay you, and like for
Hmm.
example, LBRY is a very pay to play service, although it's very small. Like the amount you have to pay to like host your videos and stuff is extremely small, and
Hmm.
very few things do you have to actually pay to unlock. There's not a lot of paid content on any other platform.
Yeah.
Most of it though
Yeah.
is subsidized, and so like
Yeah.
you can get free money from live. You can get free money from a lot of these things. The one where I don't get free money, but I'm very cash flow positive is memo.cash, oddly enough. Like obviously costs like a little bit to put stuff on the Bitcoin Cash
Hmm.
blockchain every time I
I
do
think
stuff.
Memo Cash is a good example. Yeah,
Yeah.
because like that is so cheap where it's like it's not it's not going to be detrimental.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of cool things you can do. Like you can create your own token. You can do a lot of different things on Memo Cash. I mean, it's still a
Hmm.
pretty small community, but yeah, that is a much better example
Yeah.
of the like pay to use model, I would say for sure.
I think memo.cash actually passed 1 million transactions recently
Oh,
or
okay.
something. And so I crunched the numbers down, and it's been like 1,000 a day or something averaged out on the Bitcoin Cash blockchain. So that's like a significant chunk because like yesterday I checked the stats, it was like 17K for the day on Bitcoin
Hmm.
Cash. So it's like 1/17th is all going through memo.cash or something like that. But I that's exactly the kind of thing. I think it's like the ugliest site in the world. So I'm not
Yeah,
like it's,
that is definitely their downfall.
but I do think that somewhere between that and Twitch is the right thing to do because
Yeah.
there's just something about making people pay something, just something that gets rid of all the scammers, and it's all about like economic incentives because
Hmm.
I don't know how many times you see on YouTube videos people commenting on your stuff like, oh thanks, great Bitcoin price, here's my Telegram link and stuff. almost no one falls for that, but because it's either a bot or someone in a, a country that's developing enough to where that's worth their time, they can just
Hmm.
take L after L after L just doing this stuff, and then eventually they get there. But if they had to pay, like 10 posts is like 1 cent, then before at the end of the day they got like you're paying like 50 cents to spam everyone, and it's not worth, they're losing money, and then they stop.
Hmm.
So that little trace cost, like 2 cents for a tweet, no, that's way too much. But if you do like half a cent or less, I think you cut out a lot of that stuff, and also just like trolls attacking you and stuff. Like there's just fewer of them. And the
Hmm.
thing about Memo.cash is, like with Twitch, I can just hit like and I give them like 3 or 4 cents or something. But what if I just want to just like them and give them like a half cent? I can't. I'm just not going to give them any feedback. Or what if I love them and I'm just like, dude, I want to like, give you like a buck for this, a whole US dollar worth of stuff because I love your post. Uh, I have to do like a special pay command. Whereas with
Hmm.
Melon.cash, you just hit the like thing, you just enter the amount, which is also clunky and crappy UX, but whatever. You could make like a better version of that, and uh, a lot of things are trending back around into the pay for things, because in the old school world, the boomer world of like blockbuster videos and stuff like that whole world, everyone paid for stuff. Like you paid for access to directories, you paid to license software, you paid for everything. And then became the free open source world, where all of a sudden people get used to not paying for things. And
Yeah.
now eventually I think people are getting sucked into, they're starting to see how bad an unpaid experience can be, because you start to get farmed. You're the cattle of Twitter, where they just want to like sell your data, they want to go throw ads at you, they want to tell you what to do, they want to do all this kind of stuff. And if it's like YouTube Premium, for example, a lot of people rave about that. I don't do it because I'm not paying YouTube, and I can't anyway because I don't have fiat. But like a lot
Hmm.
of people are saying that's great because you have to cut through all the ads, zero ads. You just have the ad blocker type experience.
Or just use Brave.
Yeah, or just use Brave like I do, exactly. But
Yeah.
I think that paying for premium Twitter would be like, obviously I think that Twitter's kind of evil, and I wouldn't do that anyway. Which, by the way, follow me on Twitter at the Desert Links. But I wouldn't pay them, but I would definitely pay a little bit. The problem is most of those things that are convenient, like say Netflix, where you pay a subscription, you have to just watch all this kind of stuff, and it's just so much better of a UX than torrenting. Then you have to get your old VPN, which you have to pay for too usually, and then you got to go
Hmm.
do all this stuff. You Instead of that, like instead of having to sign up for a recurring thing, what if you could just pay a few cents per video, i.e., library style? The problem is, it isn't people don't want to pay for it. It's just that the experience of paying sucks. To where you open up like a library account, and you're like, I want to pay for this thing. I don't have any credits. Where do I get them? Do I get Bittrex? I'm not gonna do it. But if it was that easy to just like zip, zip,
Hmm.
zip, you don't have to go buy any other stuff. It flows. I think people would love to pay for very small things.
Yeah, and I mean, your example of like not torrenting
Mm-hmm.
and versus like Netflix, I think is a really good example because like yeah, like I used to torrent all the videos, all the movies and TV
Mm-hmm.
shows I'd watch. I would just torrent all of it, torrent all my music, but now I listen to Spotify. So like
Mm-hmm.
if they make it a good enough product, I'm willing to pay for it if it's going to massively improve my experience.
Yeah.
And I'm sure many people would do the same. And that's why we do have like interesting kind of like versions of that where you've got like Hive where
Mm-hmm.
you do need to have something, but you don't necessarily have to spend for every transaction.
Mm-hmm.
It's more based on like stake and how that works. So I think there's really unique solutions to that as well, rather than just the strict like pay or don't pay. um, so I think those are really interesting as well. And obviously, Steam being like the first very successful social platform, on blockchain, it definitely proved that like that was the case. And yeah, I mean, it's hard to know what people are gonna want and how things are gonna play out. But from what I see, it really does come down to like who's actually using these platforms. Are they actually in line with like blockchain values?
Mm-hmm.
And and yeah, and how easy is it to actually use, and like, is it going to offer me the same kind of experience that I would be expecting? And a lot of these platforms obviously fall short of that. And I criticize them relentlessly to
Hmm.
improve. And it's weird because you'll have some platforms that have like crazy budgets, like EOS Voice, biggest domain purchase in history of the world, right? $30 million, and the platform sucks. And like, I don't even know if anyone's using it. Like, when I was first testing it, a lot of what I saw was just spam. They're gonna reset everything anyways once it actually goes live, and they're probably gonna introduce KYC. I would be very unsurprised.
I mean, they did
Um,
in the beginning, and they kind of walked back some of it because it was such a
and that's
pain.
why the points aren't legit, though. That's what
Hmm.
I'm saying. Like, they're not. So you can't buy any voice like tokens or anything because they're going to have some sort of thing where you can't withdraw from the platform unless you KYC. I'm so like 99% sure that's what we're gonna see. And
Yeah.
they're also gonna reset everyone's tokens once the beta ends. And people say, the thing I hate the most is when people say, yeah, but it's beta, so like anything can happen and it's fine because it's beta. It's like, well, Steam it is still in beta.
Which is
Let's keep that
hilarious.
in mind after 5 years. So you could be on a platform in 10 years and they're still in beta saying, oh, yeah, like, sorry, we lost your money, but like, it's beta, so it's fine. And I hate the excuse that platforms say, well, it's like, didn't you read the beta label? Obviously, we're allowed to steal your money if it's in beta. And it's like, well, anything
Yeah.
goes, I guess.
Which, after a certain amount, it's kind of like saying, you got your fiance, and it's like, but you've been engaged for 12 years. It's like, what are
Yeah.
you gonna actually do? Which funny, Hilawi in the comments, who's I'm sure he's used voice before, says it sucks so bad, bad
Yeah.
incentivization. Ooh.
Yeah, and I mean, and it's weird when companies get like crazy money, they just get so lazy and they're not trying to like
Hmm.
really do what they set out to do. And I don't want to like harsh the other company that we were talking about before, but sometimes when other companies get like big amounts of money, they just like stop trying,
Yeah.
and because they just get complacent. And
There's a
yeah.
day of reckoning, though, and that's the thing is, I think we need some sort of like a blockchain reputation system would be nice, especially because if you raise a ton of money and you deliver nothing from it or your product, whatever, you don't get to just move on like that. You should have to have people look you up and be like, okay, well, you did this and then this happened. All right, well, I'm not going to give you money. And then if someone
Yeah.
has a blank slate on their record of like their investment, block VC or whatever it is, then that's risky. They're like, you know what? I'm only getting a little bit of money. I'm gonna watch you over your shoulder all the time. I'm gonna put a bunch of stipulations. If you don't deliver this or that, then you're personally liable or something. And then you do it. All right, you get some cred, and then eventually, you can get somewhere. But like this whole thing of like, I mean,
It's all about trust, right? They just want you to trust them. Like,
yeah,
you don't verify trust. It's the opposite of what crypto's supposed to be, but that's what all these projects are asking for.
yeah, and that's the thing I never got. It's not even just crypto. It's way worse in crypto, of course. But like the VC world, who are these people that just have all this money they can just throw at stuff that's not going to pan out? And not just, oh, well, it got out competed in the market, or there's like, no, that's fine. Things don't work out all the time. But stuff that they're just vacationing and not delivering a product, and they're just like, I gave you like a bunch of money. I'll give a bunch of money to the next person. It's like, why don't you just give me a 10% of that, and I'll do nothing but like a whole week per month I'll just be singing songs of your praise with a guitar on your doorstep. Like, just that would be a better use of your money than that. But it's still crazy. So who else is annoyed at you? That's the thing, is like, obviously there's a lot of good news, but I'd like to just like see how many people we can make angry in one show, and then go to like,
Yeah.
oh, this one's actually okay.
Yeah, just really any project that doesn't allow you to withdraw. So like, obviously, like the main ones who are kind of like, annoyed with
Hmm.
me lately have been SoMe, Twetch, um, DLive, Theta, and then also Hex, which is like a social platform. But out
Hmm.
of all of the projects, I am more than happy to say that Hex is the most likely to be a scam. If not, it just is. And I'm fine to say that. And
Hmm.
one of the biggest criticisms I get for saying things like this is like, you might be scamming people out of future opportunities. And it's like, well, that's a weird way to say that I'm saving them money.
Yeah.
But it's like, yeah, sure, Hex might go up, but it's like so many sketchy things going on in Hex that it's like, even if like, here's the thing, right? You can make money on a scam
And there's another
before
comment. Hex sucks so
before it's the
bad.
rug. Yeah, like you can make money on a
Uh-huh.
scam before the rug gets pulled, and that's what people don't get because they say, "Well, look, this company, look, I made money, and this person made money, so like obviously, you can make money." It's like for now, or again, I don't want to rag too hard on Somi because like I know they're trying very hard to correct their stuff,
Hmm.
and like they get the most upset when I talk about this stuff. But it's like with them, it's like they'll say things like, yeah, but like we have all this stuff in the works and it's going to happen. It's going to happen. So like you can't like talk bad about it because like you're going to be wrong in the future when all this amazing stuff comes to fruition. And it's like, yeah, maybe. And I'll
Hmm.
happily be wrong if that means it's going to be a good project. Like I forget the exact analogy, but I really like when Alan Watts says that the fool existed in the king's court to keep the king humble. So I will be the fool if that means like keeping projects from going too crazy. Like,
Yeah, that's your
call
next
me
tattoo.
crypto cop. Yeah, right. The crypto fool or something.
Yeah, or
But
just
it's
that
like,
quote, just like on your arm
yeah,
right here, you know?
yeah, it's like right here. But yeah, it's like, I'll be the crypto cop and I'll take all the flack if that means I'm gonna save people like tons of money from like getting scammed or whatever it is. And it's like, yeah, everything I criticize isn't necessarily a scam or necessarily gonna make you lose money, but
Hmm.
like I have the criticisms are not like my opinion a lot of the time. It's like
You
this
point out
is
things that
this.
exist.
Like yeah, like you can't withdraw funds is not an opinion. It's just like what is going on. And it's like, and I'm not ever going after a project. I just approach every project with the same criteria. And it's like if you can't withdraw funds from this project, I'll post that you can't withdraw funds from this project. And
Yeah,
it's
and
as
it's
simple
it's
as
a good
that.
sign of a scam, but doesn't necessarily mean something is a scam. Which makes me
Exactly.
think, because people used to call lots of things scams, and in fact,
Yeah,
everyone,
the biggest
especially,
criticism I get is that Bitcoin was called a scam originally. So like
yeah.
I'm wrong about
Well,
everything.
that's the thing
Yeah.
is, and Bitcoiners, like hardcore maximalists, like to call everything a scam, and
Hmm.
that term is way overused. And I did actually look up the Merriam-Webster definition, and basically, a scam is just to deceive in order to deceitfully take people's money. So in order
Hmm.
to be a scam, you got to lie and you got to take their money. You got to make them lose money.
Hmm.
And so that makes a lot of things a lot that things makes things a lot more complicated in a lot of ways. So
Yeah.
but if you for example, if you promise it's a free and decentralized thing and you stand to gain money from it or make people lose money in that and you're not decentralized, you are scamming people. That is a scam, right?
Yeah.
That is clearly a scam. Now, if you're a piece of shit product, it doesn't make you a scam necessarily, unless you say the otherwise. But for example, if you're in this beta still stage and you tell people about how awesome you are without the disclaimer ahead, the disclaimer is not only when you get criticized, it has to be front and center if it's beta, right? And so, for example, I installed a Lightning wallet the other day, and I open it up, and the first thing it says is, warning, this is in beta, you could lose your funds, which honestly
Yeah.
is not very encouraging. But beyond that, it's a responsible thing to do, right? You're not just saying, oh yeah, Lightning works. And I think anyone who says, like, I do not think the Lightning Network is a scam. I think a lot of people have scammed people into using Lightning, though. Like I think that people have
Mm.
said, "Oh yeah, just use Lightning. It works great, and it works way better than it did like a few months ago. Even like a lot of different wallets are okay now, but it works better. And but if you just say like, look, Lightning could do a lot of stuff. I use it every day. Just be careful because it's in beta. Like that's fine. But if people say, "Oh, it's ready right now. It works great," that's kind of a scam. You're scamming the person. kind of.
Hmm.
And that's where those kind of
Yeah.
definitions come into play. You got to be precise.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, like I'm almost never calling anything a scam.
Mm-hmm.
I've just coined the term sketchy projects now so that people don't get mad or
Mm-hmm.
or threaten me with libel or slander. Um because yeah, like people get very touchy with the word scam, but it's
Yeah.
like all it really means is like you're deceiving, and a lot of these projects kind of are with what they do or what they offer or what they promise.
Yeah.
Um or it's just like so tucked away in the FAQ that like no one's ever going to get there or read about that, or like if you when you deposit
Mm-hmm.
to Theta, it doesn't say warning, you literally will never get this back.
Of
uh
course.
you
So
know and
let's just talk about Hex a little bit because I've heard
yeah.
random things about Hex. I actually know some people, some who I'd even call friends, who are big Hex people, and
Mm,
which is unfortunate, but whatever. I've now, of course, I read your thing on Hex that probably got everyone pissed off. Were they pissed
yeah,
off before that, or was that what got them pissed off?
that's definitely what got them
Okay.
pissed off, and every now and then I kind of resurface it, and then I get all of them coming back.
Yeah. And so I
Yeah.
don't know if it sounds like it's an actual scam, but I don't see a value proposition. It seems more of a pyramid scheme than a scam, if you know what I mean. Which
Yeah.
it's hard to. It sounds like the stupidest hair split ever, right? It's like, well, it's not like a scam; it's just a sham. It's like, what's no? But it's like, basically, it doesn't seem like it has any actual value proposition other than people buying in, and it's like that's
Yeah, you can't spend it or anything, right?
yeah. I mean, I'm sure you could like if they start moving towards something like that, then yeah. And so I kind
Well,
of
I mean, it's a completed, finished, audited project that will never be edited again, and because it's complete is what makes it not a scam.
yeah, I mean, jeez, like it's
Quote unquote, of course.
yeah. So I think that if people buy into Hex thinking it's something that it's not, that they got scammed. I think if they just
Yeah.
see what it is, they see the algorithm, they see what happens when you know, stake and when you lock funds up and when you don't, and then this, that, and this, you know, Richard gets a big reward when this happens.
Hmm.
If you're like, ah, that seems, I'm gonna put my money in that slot machine, ka-ching.
Yeah.
Like,
Hey,
okay,
I mean, if
you
you
didn't get
read my
scammed,
article,
you know?
yeah, like if you read my article and then you read the Hex white paper and then you come to the decision that Hex is
Hmm.
the greatest project on earth, that's what I'm going to put my money in,
Yeah.
then like, yeah, I mean, like, whatever. And another really stupid criticism I get is you're just calling it a scam because you sold too early. It's like, okay. I mean, like, that doesn't really make sense. I mean, first of all, I sold at like a 5x or something like that. So like I sold at a pretty good time.
The
And
ultimate
and
you
I
mad bro.
sold, yeah, and it's like I sold because I thought it was a scam, and I was like, look, I don't want to have money in this anymore. I want to let
Hmm.
people know, and I'm not so virtuous that I like burn my tokens and never and just like take the loss.
All
Like
right, you
obviously
sold them to
there's all
another
the
sucker,
people.
you know?
Yeah, well, I mean, all these people who are claiming adamantly that it's not a scam, I'll gladly sell them my tokens if they want to buy them.
Hmm.
Um, but what I'm doing is more so for the people who know nothing about this stuff. They're not going to read the Hex white paper. If, like I said, if you read the Hex white paper, if you love this and you're all in, then
Hmm.
like I'm not going to stop anyone. Do whatever you want with your money. But for the people who which I would say is a lot of people who come into crypto thinking like I'm going to get rich. Let's find the next penny stock to just like get rich on. And that happens to be Hex. That's unfortunate because again, I don't know. I don't feel confident in where these things could go. And there's so many things that are up in the air that are so questionable. Like how all the ETH goes into one address and then that address drains out and then randomly there's like a pump in Hex like a month or two later,
Hmm.
and his partner at StakeHex LLC had to close down because of due to possible market manipulation and couldn't continue on with a clear conscience. And it's like people could point at any one of these things and say, oh well, that's not enough. But if you just look at like all of them, it's like that's well more than enough to say like this is not worth my investment. And there's so many
Yeah.
better things that you could just invest in Bitcoin if you wanted, and it'd be a lot safer. Um, yeah.
Although that's kind of funny that I've sort of had to get my head wrapped around Bitcoin, is re-wrapped around Bitcoin, because back in
Yeah.
2013 I started using Bitcoin. Back 2015 I started living unbanked off of Bitcoin. Then it stopped working for peer-to-peer digital cash, and then I stopped using it. And then there was a period for a few years there where I'm just like, kind of like, don't have the best, I kind of felt like my version, like I was semi scammed into using Bitcoin because I was sold this vision that turned out to not be the way it is today. And so I started to think about, because I think a lot of people have been sold Bitcoin, which for the record, I think is definitely not a scam. A lot of people have been scammed into buying Bitcoin. They've been sort of said like, well, you're going to buy it and it's just going to go up. And a lot of language I think is extremely irresponsible. You see on Twitter and stuff like that, where it just says, buy Bitcoin every month, buy. It's like you're trying to sell someone something, and the reason you tell them to do it is because it's going to go up, and you can't guarantee that. Of course, based on the scarcity of Bitcoin compared to the decreasing scarcity of the US dollar, it should be probably it's going to go up against the dollar. That's a relatively safe bet, but it's not a guarantee. And if you sell people on this thing, that's like scamming them, basically. And especially if you sell Bitcoin's value proposition as just number go up. I mean, that's one of the things, but you should also talk about that it's a great source of universal truth for a lot of people. The blockchain is in, you own this, and everyone can kind of see it, and it's very difficult to attack and roll back. So that's a great value thing. The Bitcoin code base is being backported to constantly by all kinds of different projects. And so the mother code base kind of feeds everything as like the source of that. That's value. And Da Vinci Jeremy pointed out something else that I didn't take into account, that a lot of people say, if you have like a node from 2009 from Bitcoin and you sync it, it's going to sync today to the current Bitcoin blockchain. I always thought, like, what? Like, that's completely stupid. Just like, why would you have a 10-year-old node? Well, who cares if it syncs? But he pointed out that some old like institutions and things like that aren't constantly revamping their software and things like that. And if something breaks, like the technology changes to where all of a sudden they can't use it anymore, then that's a liability. And the fact that you can still sync it anywhere along there, it's like, oh, that makes it more stable than other things. And it's like, I'm not like, I think Bitcoin could scale and still do all this stuff. Don't get me wrong on that part. But like, you got to find the non-scammy parts about it. Otherwise, you're just saying number go up and you're scamming people, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. And like another thing that I would add is like, I treat Bitcoin as a defensive asset because, if the stock market crashes or, the economy collapses, people are going to pull out of the stock market because they need money for food. But the way that I've sort of like my tagline for it is people will sell their stocks to afford food, and people will hold Bitcoin to afford food. Because Bitcoin is like naturally, if we see the economy going to zero, Bitcoin will be a great defensive asset, likely would be going up, and you could afford your food. But if you just had stocks, you can't buy anything with stocks. So because of that, like lack of liquidity, it kind of screws people.
Yeah.
And like we pointed out earlier, we've had the largest money supply increases in history, which I still don't think really is internalized by most people. Like that's literally like one of the biggest things to happen in economic history in North America, which has happened over the last year, and people are just kind of like, oh yeah, I mean, whatever, the money supply.
Which is why I keep this, got my bolivars, just like it show people, it's like, oh, this is worth such a small fraction of a cent now, that like, and it could happen to anyone. I mean,
exactly.
Like, what are some things that you remember when you were younger costing something completely different? So first off, I haven't kept up with the Canadian dollar. How much has it inflated over the last 20 years compared to the US dollar? Is it comparable?
That's a good question. I should check, but it's pretty comparable. Like, especially with like the massive rise in the last year, it's pretty much the same with the Canadian dollar, where yeah, it just like went parabolic for a little bit, and now it's still going up faster than it ever was before as well. But yeah, I mean, like I remember as a kid where you could get certain things like certain candies for like a cent or like
Hmm.
5 cents, and now all of that stuff is like 50 cents, like a dollar, which is just like insane when you really think about it. But again, people don't really look at it that way. In a weird way, people look at it the opposite. They're like, did you know if you had $1 million 100 years ago, today it'd be worth $10 million? You gained $9 million. That's amazing. It's like, no, actually, it's the
Hmm.
opposite, really. Like it's because it's because it's losing value, and it would actually be the opposite. Whereas it's like if you had that money today, it would be worth 10 times less, not necessarily, it wouldn't just increase in value.
Yeah.
And I think people don't look at it that way. And that's kind of the mental stall that people get when they're trying to like internalize this. And people just don't learn about personal finance or finance in general. And yeah, and it just I've always said this, and I made a video on this like a while back, and I said it wasn't that people don't understand crypto, it's that they don't understand fiat, so they don't understand the need for crypto, or they
Yeah.
don't understand the problem, so they don't see the need for the solution. And when you have that block, it's like, well, what can you do? I mean, if you tell someone to learn about fiat, they're like, what, you think I'm stupid? Like, I know how
Hmm.
money works. It's like, what, because you spend it? I drive a car, but I don't know
Hmm.
how the engine combustion works. And I'm not like embarrassed to admit that. And that's
Hmm.
what people kind of need to get in tune with, I would say.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. People don't understand. Like, I even think that I think the people who understand it less than people who don't understand it. There was some
Yeah,
TikTok
yeah.
video that was flying around of some young girl who's like took $2 bills next to each other and was like, "This is the exact same as this, but it's different stuff printed on it. It's just the exact same thing. There's no difference." And therefore, like, the conclusion was, why does it matter if you print as much money as possible? It's just more money. Which the conclusion is just like, okay, you haven't finished thinking through it, but you already found that fiat is a scam. You already found that just like, oh yeah, this, it's funny because like, I got this 500 bolivars. I got this 50 euros, which is worth more. I mean, kind of like this one better. It looks kind of nicer. It has a dude on it. This one has no dude on it. Like this paper, it's not worth anything except that you said it is, and therefore you're kind of, it's just so weird that you can kind of think about that. And then a lot of people think about, oh,
Hmm.
inflation rate, because if not, then you have blah, 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 and then deflation's no good, and then, blah, blah, and as long as you don't hit into stagflation, you like to have all this like, I wouldn't say useless knowledge, but a lot of it's kind of useless when you start thinking, because inflation is just, scarcity with the same demand for the same assets. If there's more supply, then the individual units, given the same demand, are going to be worth less. And so I wouldn't mind high inflation rates if, can you imagine if the dollar got like printed year after year and then you just got those dollars like a percentage? Like, say, what if it was
Yeah.
like 5% inflation per year and then you just got an extra like 5% interest just into your account to like cover the inflation? Like, you wouldn't mind. In fact, you'd feel like Christmas even though you just did not lose money. But like the
Yeah.
problem is all that printed stuff goes somewhere else and then people get to go spend it on stuff that does not benefit you. And the idea that like whoever prints stuff, what I don't understand is like how people ever pay taxes anymore, because they just print so much anyway. They already like
Hmm.
steal one way. And the
Yeah,
fact
you're
that,
already getting taxed from inflation.
yes, and then they manage to tax you as well.
Hmm.
But the worst thing, I don't know if you saw this thing I posted on Twitter about the Canadian finance minister or whatever floating the idea
Oh
of,
yeah, so dystopian. Oh my
oh yeah,
god.
of the what do they say, pre unlocking the preloading
Unlock your
stimulus.
savings. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it's just
Unlock
like,
your savings. Why is it locked? Let's unlock this. Let's unlock your doors too. Let's
yeah.
like let's stop having security of any kind.
So like imagine if you're using a cryptocurrency today, you are paying at least for security with inflation. And because the asset's value is going up over time, you don't really see it. You don't really see that you're like every time. Let's just take Bitcoin because it's very simple. You pay, what is it, like 2 or 3% inflation a year right now? I don't remember what it is most, but you pay that to the miners to keep the value from going to zero for it being insecure. You pay that to them.
Yeah.
So you pay this much of a tax. Now imagine if you had to pay like a 5% tax out of your numbers, not just the devaluation, although obviously Bitcoin's going up. That I'm not saying that, but what if you actually had to pay like 2 to 5%? You have to like send out of your wallet to pay a bill, and then it's like that for security. But then you're already paying this for security. But then what if, in addition to that, if you had like a really big Bitcoin wallet, like a lot of stuff, you worked really hard, you got all that, then like the developers could just come in and just go like, whoop, scoop out of that, unlock your preloaded stimulus out of that too. It's just like, how many things are they like nicking you from? How many angles are they taking money from? Like,
And it's sad too, because it's like they're saying, "Oh, everyone's saving. How dare they, be so like, financially like have good personal finance." And like it's like how dare they like, not be consumers through and through. It's like, how many, you need 5 TVs. 4 is not enough. And that whole mentality is just so like, people are becoming more aware of personal finance. Everyone's stuck at home. They're just going through YouTube videos. They're becoming much more like aware of all this stuff. So they're like, yeah, like maybe I should save some money. Maybe I should have an emergency fund. Maybe I should put some money aside to invest. People say investing is like a luxury. Like you have to be wealthy to invest. It's like, well, when I started investing, I was poor. And that's how you become wealthy, is from investing. So I don't look at it as like a luxury. I look at it as, and again, as necessity. I said earlier, yeah, or even just like, it's not even about becoming rich. Again, it's just not becoming poor is why you invest. And people have to flip that mindset, because it's like, oh, well, I'm not so greedy that I need to become rich and I need to buy Bitcoin and get rich. And it's like, no, just buy Bitcoin so you don't become poor. Like,
yeah, you don't starve.
Don't do it because you're a greedy, selfish person. Do it because you don't want your family to go hungry. It really got to flip that mindset.
It reminded me of Ken Bozak's story, and I love Ken Bozak for a bunch of different reasons, as everyone should. But one of the big reasons is he is one of the most genuine people out there for whatever it is. I call him the soul of the crypto community for all it is, all the scammy, shilly nonsense, all like the virtue, all the everything. That's Ken.
Yeah,
but like his story.
I was on his podcast yesterday, actually.
Yeah. So I'm sure, I don't know. I mean, the viewers probably didn't know the story. So even if you have, but he's talking about how he got into crypto, and he was just saying like, he was getting close to 30. He got some gray hairs, or like, man, I should invest. That's what big people do. They invest. And so just like, that's as simple as the mind thing. Like, I don't know what to invest in. I don't know what it is. I just think adults should invest, I guess. And I'm getting old.
Yeah.
So he goes and tries to invest, and he just wants to put a bunch of money into Snapchat stock before it goes out. And then they just say, haha, you can't, because you're not like an accredited investor and all this stuff. And he's just like, oh, I didn't know. Here I was trying to be a big person, and they won't let me. He's just like, and then he just like hears about this Bitcoin thing, but you can just buy it. You can invest, and no one can tell you not to. And then it's just like, the rest is history. And it's funny. It's such a, it sounds almost like almost no one has gone through that life trajectory of, they just think, oh, I'm starting to get some grays in my beard here. I have to invest because that's what adults do somehow. So I can't, therefore Bitcoin. Almost no one does that, but it is kind of what has caused people to get into this stuff, because, a lot of people are just, they want something more out of their money, and they're just told they can't unless they put it into their 401k, their Roth IRA or whatever the hell it is. Like before, now they can just buy something, buy a digital token, and if it goes up, it does. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And I think that it's just the fact that, kind of like with the stablecoin thing, where people can't have their money safe from inflation, or they can't have control over their own money in any way, that now people have started to, because of crypto, crypto is a fiat education crash course, because you get, not only do you realize how inflation and things like that work, but you actually you start to realize other stuff like investing. Like I never thought about. I mean, obviously I thought about investing in at some point, but like it was never a thing that like little old me today would ever do before crypto. And now it's just like, oh yeah, so you want to make sure your money is in things that you think will go up over time rather than the opposite. And then there's risk to it. You want to diversify your portfolio and stuff. And it's like people don't think about that in their life. They just think I have all my money in my bank account, and it's like a couple grand, and I make money every month, and it all goes into all the stuff I think I own, but I really don't because the bank owns it. And just they don't think beyond that about like, oh, I gotta have. What if I actually had money and didn't just have access to things that I paid to? Oh, and then you have money, you're like, well, what happens if someone robs my house and then all the cash in the mattress goes away? Oh, maybe I should invest in security. What happens if the dollar goes to zero? I should have something that doesn't. Or what happens if Bitcoin gets hacked and it just disks, or whatever simplistic thought you'd have?
Yeah.
Maybe I should try a different thing as well. I should have some precious metals or whatever. And then the whole
Yeah, once
financial
you kinda
education starts at that point.
Yeah, once you sort of really start to get down that rabbit hole, you realize there's so many facets to this that you never even really thought about until you started to really get into it. Like, I was talking with my one buddy, like a bunch of my friends really got into investing over the last year because they're like, okay, like clearly like crazy stuff's going on. We have to actually get a little more serious. And we were talking about how like I never, and same with him, like we were never super money conscious. Like he's like, now I pack all my lunches for work. Like I don't buy Subway and stuff. Like it really changes your perspective when you're like, oh, do I want the new console, or do I want like, you know, some crypto, or, you know, 5 stocks that are going to pay me a certain amount of dividends every month for the rest of my life. And it really just changes your perspective on this kind of thing. And it really did for me too. Like I would, you know, I only had a little bit of money and I was just going paycheck to paycheck. But then once I started investing, I was like, oh, like I can save money by not doing this. I can save money by not doing this, and I can put it all into investing. And I can't remember who said this, but it was, if you don't track for it, or no, it's something about like not being able to optimize if you don't track for it. So it was just like anything that you track, you can optimize, and anything you're not tracking, it's almost impossible to optimize it. So, so that goes for budgeting, investing, all the different things that you do. And even if you get into investing and you're like, a lot of people don't invest because they're like, oh, this is so complex and there's so much to learn and I'll just make mistakes. When I started investing in crypto and in stocks, I don't like just doing like an investment portfolio where you just give money and then they just do it, because then you don't really learn anything and you're still at the whims of what someone else is doing.
Yeah.
So I, you know, amateurishly started investing myself, lost money, made money, whatever. You learn from losing money, and you win from obviously getting money.
Yeah.
So it's a win-win no matter what. And I think everyone would benefit a lot more from just diving in. I mean, obviously you might want to do more research and maybe talk with a financial advisor. This is financial advice.
Small bits as well, you know?
Yeah, but like just kind of like getting started and like doing versus like waiting for the right time, because you'll never be at the right time. You'll always be like, oh, I could have more money, or, you know, before I start investing. But the best time to invest was yesterday, and the next best time to invest is today. So
yeah. And also I think it does kind of like, it's funny how humanity has worked very hard to have a stable existence in an unstable world. And to a certain extent, they sort of lost what it means to be, I wouldn't say human, but greater than that. They've lost what it is to be a person, a being on this earth, because there is scarcity and there's plenty and things like that. And when you have, let's say you're in crypto, that's like the first thing where you realize, oh, wow, it went down 80% over the last year or so. I could lose everything. And then you just realize like you were living at a certain standard, and then you just lose. And then in order to keep your lifestyle, I guess, you have to really cut the spending and stuff. And then next time it goes up, you're not just, I have money, I'll spend it. It's like you do for now, but you could not later. And you kind of learn the ups and downs. And I think that that makes you a better small business person if you decide to start one, because you're not going to have, you don't start the shop and then you're guaranteed a certain income every month. No, it's like you have good months, you have bad months. They go up and down, up and down. If you just live at your top, you're going to go broke. You have to learn how to ride the waves. And when you're sometimes your business does not make money a few months, especially a new business. But then over time, you might have a really gangbuster month and it goes up, and you either decide to keep that in savings for the bad times, or you can also decide to invest in growing it so that then your income is going to be higher in the future and stuff. And so just that little thing kind of makes you think about life, and it makes you think about, okay, what about my diet? I'm just eating whatever I want right now, but what happens if I get heart disease later? You start thinking about, oh, I'm going to invest in myself, and like, well, do I work out or not? What about this and that? And you're like, how about my home security system, or my home security, my personal security thing? Do I know how to defend myself physically on a very basic level in case something happens? And then you start thinking about just anything else. How about your mental health? How's that going? Do you have a good little support group and a good work-life balance kind of a situation, so you don't go crazy, especially if you end up locked down indoors for months on end? Can you keep your sanity together? Like, you start to like.
I think a lot of us crypto guys are
didn't have anything to lose,
fine.
but
yeah, we're like, wait, like it's locked down. I mean, I'm just doing the same stuff, but yeah.
Yeah, so we're at the hour and a half mark here. Why don't we hit up really quick your favorite alternative platform for, let's just say posting and stuff, because obviously LBRY would probably be number one on a lot of people's stuff, but it's just content. You're not socializing on, it's not really a social network, so to speak. So what's your top one?
I really like the Hive ecosystem. I do think it's like a very, very unique system. And it's obviously based off of the first, social media platform, which was like Steam. So I really like that. I mean, it's not so much so for like status posts, like, just like little updates. I mean, really, the only platform that comes to mind for like quick status updates that you can actually like do decent on is SoMe, but I also have a lot of criticisms of SoMe, because it's kind of like my alternative to Facebook. But that's probably what I would say. I mean, if you're willing to overlook a lot of their issues and bugs and different things, and I know they're pushing to make it better, so that's probably my number one for like status posts, I would say, and kind of like a Facebook alternative. But just real quick on what you were just saying, I would say that's kind of lifestyle inflation, or that's the term that I would use, where people tend to parallel their spending to their earning, and then they just lose, because you'll have times of adversity and times of prosperity, and if you can't, because it's simple, right? If you're going up in a straight line and something bad happens to one of them, it's going to collapse. Whereas like if you can keep the same level of spending and then your income goes up or your investing goes up, then it'll be exponential. And it's a very simple prospect, but it's so important. So I say lifestyle foundation versus inflation, where foundation is just have the basics of what you need to be happy, get value out of life, and once you have that, try your best to just absolutely stick to that, and just invest everything else on the side.
Well, that's the thing, is on that kind of note, a lot of people are spending money on stuff that doesn't make them happier, and a lot of people take that to status. Mean money does not make you happier, but it can. You're just poorly allocating your capital. So, for example, what if you spend all your money on rent on some fancy place that you just sleep in, so you're not paying attention to, or you're out all the time. Maybe you can get a different place that's not, because that's not making you happier to be there all the time. Maybe you have that because you like to go out on the weekends, and that actually makes you happy. Or maybe you do like, you love coffees, but if you invest in a spanking awesome espresso machine like I have, and you can make basically as good as whatever else out there, and that's a very valuable thing to you, but you don't have to pay like $5 per coffee cup. Maybe it's like $1.50 or something, which is still higher than a lot of people would spend if they just were being cheap about it. But you have that same experience, but you don't have to do that as much. Or Like, what if you're paying for co-working spaces that it starts to become pretty expensive, but you decide to just not do that, but go work out at a coffee shop like 2-3 times a month just to like get yourself in a different mind space. That could be cheaper. And it's not just that it could be cheaper, but it could make you happier than to just have a different office you go to kind of thing. Or, people pay a lot for a car. They'd have to pay month after month for just a car. Why don't you get a really crappy car that just gets you where you want it, and then get a really nice one in like a few years that you'll be actually happy to drive. It's not just yeah, I'm fine. It's like a lot of people, the lifestyle inflation thing, as you mentioned, like the TV that I have, that I have, I think it's like 5-6 years old or something like that, and there's no new one on the horizon. Some people just like feel like they got to buy a new one, but like, what else does it give you? Like, are you
Yeah, that
watching
blows
it
my
all the
mind. There's
time?
not even like a better improvement or anything. I've had the same TV since I was 16. I got my first job. I still have that same old clunky plasma screen TV, and it's like that's all you really need. And if it broke, I'd buy a new one.
Yeah.
But you really don't need that stuff. And I think the biggest thing is that a lot of what people spend on is for status or just to like impress people. But the worst part is you're not impressing anyone that is going to help you achieve your goals or like become more successful.
Yeah.
You're only like signaling to other broke people that you're better than they are, and then they're impressed by that because they want to do the same thing, right? So
Yeah.
like I put out a post today. I was like, I get more value out of buying like a cool like something for my studio than I do if I were to like go and buy a car or something, because a way to get around lifestyle inflation for me is I can have anything I want delivered. Instacart costs literally nothing. It's like on all the things that I get delivered, which is 99.9% of everything that I get, is like what, like $10 in delivery fees a month. It's like, is gas more than $10? Is insurance more than $10?
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of silly when most people like argue that it's like there's no way to not have a car, and it's like obviously you can find ways to do certain things, but I'll probably get fought a lot on that because everyone has a car. But I think
Yeah.
there's a lot better, like there's better examples, like buying a $100 t-shirt. Like who's gonna care? Like, will most people even notice? Or what you're really paying for is some random stranger's compliment. And if you're willing to pay $100 for a random stranger's compliment, it's like that says more about what you value than it does like what you're actually like getting, right? And it's more of something that you have to kind of evaluate. It's like, would you have actually given them $100 to compliment you? Is that what you're
Yeah.
looking for? Or are you looking for like, do you really get the value out of the shirt? Because I'm not saying someone who really likes a certain shirt shouldn't have that thing, but you have to know that it's for you and
Yeah.
not
You have
for
to like
other
it.
people.
Yeah. And I find that a lot of times the buying stuff to impress other people they don't even like even. I find a lot of times that's even the sophisticated approach. The usual approach is autopilot. They just like, gotta buy this. It's like, all right, well, I got enough money now. I gotta get a new car. It's just, this is what the new car, then the dealer says, oh, this is the new 2018, whatever. Okay, I think I can afford a 2018 right now. And I'm just going to get like a 2018 soccer mom car that like no one's impressed by when the beater worked just fine. And it's not even like, well, I'm going to buy a new car and people are going to go, woo. It's like they just buy the thing, or they just like, well, I shop at Whole Foods now, apparently. And then they buy the same old like bag of chips that you could get from Walmart. But the Whole Foods version, you're not even buying healthy stuff from there. You're just buying like the marked up crap. Or it's like the dish soap. I'm buying Whole Foods dish soap now. That always blows my mind when I see people who have like household cleaning products that are just branded from Whole Foods, and they're not like super, scent free, whatever else free. They're not. It's not like intentional. It's just like I pay more money now. It's what I do. It's like,
It's not even,
what?
it's one thing to like buy organic, and it's another thing to buy like brands. And I think that's the real like connection that has to be made. It's like, yeah, if you're buying shirts that are made from special fibers because you've got a skin condition, it's like obviously that's going to be better for you in the long run. But if you're buying $100 t-shirts because your boys are going to be like, hey, nice shirt, bro, it's like, well, what, like, is that worth it? And I would say no. But
Yeah, and a lot of people, it goes beyond, like if they do actually do that and they get something they want out of it, that is kind of a, like, going back to the whole like Twitch type of thing. When you pay for something, if you value something and you pay for it, there's nothing wrong with that if you're satisfied as a customer. The
yeah.
issue starts getting where you feel like you got to pay for stuff you don't have to pay for. And it's just like, well, I want, everyone has dark mode. I'm going to buy dark mode because, well, why don't you just use the one that doesn't make you pay for dark mode? Yeah, but all my friends are all, stunting on me. I bought the dark mode on Twitch. It's like, well,
Yeah.
you kind of like got scammed a little bit. And where people are
Yeah.
not, they don't buy because their friends will be oppressed necessarily. They buy because it's just what you do. You're supposed to. You're kind of, and a lot of times you buy from a company that is, that's trying to get you to buy, but not because you want it. They just want you to buy. And then you end up being, a lot of times they overproduce things, but their profit margins are high enough that they have a lot of wasteful stuff that they just produce. And then it's just this weird cycle of non-consensual financial relationships, sort of, where you didn't say, I want that, I'm going to pay for it. You just like, you're paying for it now. And then they're building it because you're paying for it. And then they build it because they build it. And then, they're supposed to, because they got all kinds of grants and tax cuts and stuff to just produce. But if you just let the world be the way it would be, then people would never pay for that stuff. Like
Yeah.
university, right? You go to university, you pay money, no one can pay for it out of pocket. So you have to get loans that then you pay back over a long period of time, and then you don't really use the education anyway. A lot of people don't. And
Yeah.
it's just, maybe if you just opted out, you could afford to pay for something that would, make sense. But yeah, this
If
is,
anyone had not gone to university in the last 4 years and invested in Bitcoin, they would be having a much better time.
or if they just invested at all, that would
At all,
get
yeah,
them,
absolutely.
that would, even if they didn't have any more money, even if they ended up the same amount in debt as after university, they'd be a hell of a lot smarter than if they would did a college degree, because they'd have like small business investing, whatever experience that then they could use to make something really cool. But yeah, I feel like we could go on for hours and hours on this. We could probably get it wrapped up. Where do I send people? How about the Cointree, right? cointr.ee/ScottC
Scottsy business. Yeah.
And
Scottsy business everywhere. And if you can't find me under that, you'll be able to find me under crypto and things.
yes, so crypto and things, but mostly it's Scottsy business. The Cointree will let you send this fine gentleman some money, as well as find all the stuff that he does. And definitely, he is the alt platform guinea pig that just goes into all these terrible, terrible places. Not always, but and then takes the worst that they have to offer, and then just tells you about it, and also reports on earnings from various incentivized platforms, which is always, I think, very valuable, because some people don't use them because they're like, I'm not going to use that. But then you could make a lot of money on it. Or on the other side, people spend a lot of time on these kinds of things, thinking because you get tokens. Yay, I'm getting paid. But how much are you getting paid? It's just like,
And can you withdraw them?
Oh,
and,
yes.
Could you make more on other platforms? Yeah, because especially for people who are getting into content, it's like super important for them to realize it's like, yeah, you can get you can get money out of the value that you provide for other people without actually having to take anything from anyone. The great thing about a lot of these platforms is they're not zero-sum games. They're very abundant. It's about abundance. It's not necessarily about scarcity. So I think that's really good. And very soon, hopefully, fingers crossed, I'm coming out with my comprehensive review of 160 platforms before the year is over. I've just been timing it to try to be generous to a lot of these platforms, to give them space to like fix things. And because it's like, I'm about to release it, and then there's this big problem with one of them. And I'm like, I'll give you a week. And then we're like 5 months down the road. So I have to release it before the year ends, though, because I used to do it every like 4 months, and apparently now it's like once a year. So
as long as they're, as long as they're all on notice, as long as everyone knows. Well, I mean, I've already told Float they should have a multi-coin wallet, and if they have that by the end of the year, I'll have a glimmer of hope. But this is not the time to go into all that stuff. But anyway, thanks
Yeah.
everyone for watching. It's been a great pleasure. Thanks for the people that donated. Obviously, follow, subscribe everywhere, as well as Scott C. And in a week, I'll see you for the Dash podcast. And under 2 weeks, there will be the next Digital Cash Rundown will not be on a Friday because a Friday is Christmas Day. And it won't be on a Thursday because that would be Christmas Eve. It will be on a Wednesday. So Wednesday at 3 p.m. 3 p.m. Eastern Time or 8 p.m. UTC. And I should also point out we will have some special guests on that one. Yet to be determined. As soon as you know, there you go. Oh, Crypto Insights Journal says, hi, Joel. Hi, Scott. Hi. And by the way, bye. We'll see you around.